Good morning. Good morning. So briefly, before I get started, I'm going to give you a disclaimer so you understand what I'm talking about, why I'm talking about it, and how it all fits together. So basically, everyone has heard about these issues surrounding LGBT, whatever, and I decided to address it. I'm going to go through my life story, and I'm going to talk about how Konko faith and Islam both inform my approach to LGBT issues. I need you to be patient. I'm going to be working through 150 years of Konko tradition and 1,500 years of Islamic jurisprudence. A lot of people don't really understand that there is so much, but I want to make everything cohesive and sort of as comprehensive as possible. That way it has intellectual integrity. By the time I get done, hopefully you guys will have a better understanding, not just of Konko faith as dictated by Ikigami Konko Daijin, but also maybe you'll have a little bit of insight on Islam as well, and how the two are actually more similar than you may have imagined. Is that good? Okay. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard man dha alladhi yashfa'u 'indahu illa bi'idhnihi ya'lamu ma bayna aydihim wa ma khalfahum wa la yuhituna bi shay'in min ilmihi illa bima sha'a wasi'a kursiyyuhu as-samawati wal ard wa la ya'uduhu hifdhuhuma wa huwal aliyyul azim. So what I just recited was a verse called Ayatul Kursi. It's called the Throne verse. It's one of the most popular in Islam. And it talks about how God's throne or shrine is the heavens and the earth itself. And as soon as I talk more about Konkokyo, you'll see where the direct corollaries come from. I'm going to do some reading and some summarizing, so again, please be patient. Today I will talk about a topic making a lot of news by comparing two religions. One, a monotheistic practice from Japan, and the other one, a monotheistic practice from Arabia. This is a tricky and their attitudes towards a certain segment of the population. This is a very tricky proposition full of landmines, and so it requires me to be absolutely honest, even if that offends. Closer?
Can you move it? Yes. Could you move it closer? Yes. More.
Is that better?
A little bit more.
More?
Thank you.
Good? Okay. I was trying not to get too much of a reverberation, but apparently that's not going to do it. So I'm tracing the attitudes of two religions, one from Arabia, one from Japan, and their attitudes towards a particular set of the population. Since this is a bit tricky theologically, I have to be really, really honest on both sides. And so some liberals will be offended, some conservatives will be offended, but what I strive to do is to tell the absolute truth to the best of my ability. Any of my mistakes belong to me alone, and any truth that I manage to tell is only due to Tenchi Kani no Kami, whom some of you will call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hopefully this works out pretty well. I believe the best way to start this is to talk about my own faith journey and how I got to where I am today. I'm going to disclose some details about my own life with the hope that it will provide a clear example of the love and mercy that we all desire not only for ourselves, but hopefully that we'll be able to extend to other people when this is all said and done. And hopefully when I'm finished talking, we'll have more mercy and love, not just for ourselves and our ancestors, but for the people who are around us right now in the world that we live with. So I'll start by saying I'm a strict monotheist. I've been so since my first sort of exegesis as a very young child in the 1980s. And I actually gave my first sermon in 1995. And I've had a meditation practice since 1999. I've studied different religions, but my philosophical foundation is in Christian Gnosticism, which some people will call mysticism. I've studied both the Valentinian and Sethian schools extensively, as found in the teachings of the Nag Hammadi Library, as well as the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I had a particular focus on the Book of Enoch. The teachings of Christian Gnosticism can be summed up with two things. The first one, God is a single, indivisible, all-encompassing light, and the source of all light, the only true light that exists. The second is at the point of Christian Gnosticism, is not the worship of Jesus, but to strive to become like Jesus, to reflect that example in day-to-day living. So Jesus is not an object of adoration, but a role model that we aspire to be like. So I practiced this until about 2005, and at that point, I made a really surprising decision that I was going to focus on getting money and power. So that turned out okay. I did a pretty good job. And I stayed in that vein of living in that sort of process until about 2019. In 2018, I had a near-death experience. That did not change my viewpoints. I was still trying to make a business comeback. But one day I was walking down the street in Japantown, and I saw what I thought was a Japanese shrine. And I said to myself, ooh, money, power, amaterasu, omikami. So amaterasu, if you see the red dot on the Japanese flag, people say it represents the sun. It doesn't represent the sun. The sun is a symbol of Amaterasu, and Amaterasu is the Japanese deity that not only represents Japan, but imbues the imperial family with the divine right to rule. And so I said to myself, I'm going to give her a white peach, and she is going to give me money and power. And hopefully it can be very transactional. I can get in and get out, and it will be very quick. So I went in, and I met the sensei, and I announced to her that I had a peach for Amaterasu. I had cleaned it in the Shinto manner, and I was ready for the cash. And so she said, okay, Amaterasu. She did a short ceremony for me, and I thought that was really, really cool. And then she sat down and she said, you need to know, here we do not worship Amaterasu or Mikami. We worship Kami-sama. So what does Kami-sama mean? In English, I would say it means God the Exalted. In Arabic, we would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God the Exalted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, let's see here. I was like, I don't know who that is. So I got some books to read. I took them home. I started to read them. And I learned that Kami-sama was short for Tenchi Kane no Kami-sama. And what does that mean? Tenchi, heaven and earth. Kane, metal, gold, money. In this essence, is a reflection of Konko, which is the golden light. No is of Kami is deity. So when you say Tenshi Kane no Kami, you're saying the golden light of the heavens and the earth. I thought that was incredible, and I said, wow, this is pretty cool. But then the more I read, the more I became upset. And excuse me if I get emotional. So, when I was a child, I had an experience, and I got to go to a place that was the nursery where stars are born. And I got to see how the galaxies are born and die. And I felt really, really close to this thing that had no name, had no body, but somehow was connected to those stars. And as my childhood went on, I went from hanging out in the stars and seeing the galaxies, not knowing what they were, to seeing Earth and the people and their religions and their interpretations of religions. And my life got worse and worse and worse. By the time I was 8 years old, in 1993, my mother had died. By the time I was 18, in 2002, my father had died. In the first 21 years of my life, I lived in at least 24 homes. And so, in remembering all this, in the middle of the night, reading books given to me by the Konko sensei, I said to this kami-sama who I had just met, "You and I are not on speaking terms." And that's how I left it for about a month. Eventually, I felt guilty, and so I came back to the strange Japanese shrine on Bush Street, where they worshiped the one God who's the light of the heavens and the earth. And I told the sensei what I just told you. And the sensei said to me, "Kami does not desert people. People desert Kami. You need to forgive Kami, and you need to forgive yourself for abandoning Kami." So it took another week, and finally I sat down and I aired my complaints to Kami-sama. And the response was actually immediate. The answer was, "I did not and would never abandon you, neither did I betray you. I introduced myself to you so early in life so that the trouble that was to come in your childhood would not destroy you." Obviously, I cried like I'm crying now for a long time, because I had spent my life subconsciously angry. And I spent the next year working through that anger. Unfortunately, we had a pandemic that aided in the process. I had a lot of time and space to think and reflect. And I got pretty well versed in Konko faith. I read not only Shine From Within, which was the original book given to me, but a book called Shinjo no Kokoroe. That means living with faith. I read a book called Voice of the Universe. I read Gorikai 3 and some other books. So what did I learn? Konko faith has a very, very simple premise. Ikigami konko daijin tenshi kane no kami ishin ni negai okage wa waga kokoro ni ari kongetsu konichire tanome. That's what's written up there. It means through the way of Konko Daijin to Tenshi Kani no Kami, this light of the heavens and the earth, pray with a single heart. The divine favor is within one's own heart. On this very day, pray. So Konko Daijin was born in 1814. He died in 1883. He was born a normal person, not special. In fact, he was a second son with no inheritance. Fortunately, he was fortunate enough to be adopted into a family that didn't have children, and so he could get the inheritance. I didn't write it down, but of course the senseis know a plot twist. As soon as he got adopted, that family had sons and daughters. Nevertheless, he made his way in life, was going along. He was building his own house, doing pretty well. And then he was struck ill in his 42nd year, which in traditional Japanese religion is a very unlucky year. Of course, he had paid attention to all the zodiacs and the days and the directions. That's what they called it, the zodiac, the days and the directions. The cardinal points on the compass, north, south, east, west. And nonetheless, he fell ill, and it turned out that he had offended a deity called Konjin, which for thousands of years had terrorized the populace of Japan to the point where the people spent all of their time trying to avoid Konjin. And his family, when they found out this, they started speaking up, protesting. He did everything right. He followed the rules. He obeyed the superstitions. And Konko Daijin suddenly found himself able to speak even though he was dying, and he said, "You know, I tried my best. But maybe I messed up." And he accepted his own death. I mean, imagine that. No more grandkids, no more going to visit your grandparents, no more food, no more bills. But he let it go. And in letting it go, he impressed this deity who revealed, well, I'm not actually Konjin, my name is Tenshi Kani no Kami. And you have impressed me. And so this man began a journey. He went around the different shrines for a couple of years, gradually learning until the point where Tenshi Kani no Kami started speaking to him directly. In this way, he went from being a regular man to what Japanese people call an ikigami. In Islam, the term for this is awliya, which means a friend of Allah. He stopped practicing all superstitions, including prohibitions indicated in the practices of following the days and directions. He advised people to practice a true faith in what he said was the one God, Tenshi Kani no Kami. And he said the most important thing was to reform one's own heart. I have some quotes which were going to be a PowerPoint. I'm just going to read them to you. Please bear with me. I will read them slowly. People go to worship and receive teachings, but no one follows what they are told. They return home and alter the teachings for themselves, and so there are no divine blessings. For their resultant failures, they blame Kami. Reforming your heart is most important. And this is in First Gorikai, Ichimura Mitsu Goro, chapter 19, verses 1 through 3. As Alan Sensei pointed out last year, he's the guy who told me to put the microphone closer to my mouth. One translation of the Divine Reminder says that Kami's blessings are not just in a single heart, which means a focused and directed heart, but a heart filled with peace and joy that is centered in the practice of prayer. He said practicing faith is not especially difficult. When you get up in the morning, give thanks and pray for a good day. Inform Kami that you are leaving, and when you return home, give thanks for coming back safely. When going to sleep, give thanks for the day. This is practicing faith. That's in the second Godikai. Praying without ceasing, remaining joyful and embracing peace in one's own heart in a way that leads others to embrace that same peace is what in Konko faith is known as the path of an ikigami. Again, in Islam, people call this the path of the awliya. When your hands are God's hands, your feet are God's feet, your mouth is God's mouth. Everything you do is kami-centered and not human-centered. All of your actions are in service to God at that point. And for a final quote from Konko Daijin, he said, passing on Konko Daijin's words without changing their meaning and helping others to practice faith is to show true appreciation to Kami. This will make you a Kami. You should not consider yourself to be above Kami-sama, even if you become Ikigami. So it doesn't mean that you suddenly become special or that you're this divine being and people have to worship you. You're the hands and feet of God. So, after practicing this for 3 years, I was praying to Tenchi Kani no Kami-sama, and Kami-sama said to me, you should convert to Islam. And I said, what? You should convert to Islam. You believe that, AG-san? I ignored it. I said, if maybe in 30 days, if I hear it again, I'll pay attention. 30 days later, you should convert to Islam. I was like, no, I am not converting to Islam. I did not like the idea of Muslims. I did not like what I saw on the news. I did not like anything that I had heard about this religion from the East. And in spite of that, I had to come into contact with a Muslim family, and they showed me what Konko Daijin also had referred to as a middle way. And one day I was in an art space, and a 10-year-old girl, her name is Fatima, came to me and said, when are you going to convert to Islam, Robin? And I looked at her. She repeated the question, when are you going to convert to Islam? And I thought about what Konko Daijin said again. The parent Kami of the universe borrows the voices of humans to convey teachings. Those who practice faith should listen well, even to children's lullabies, as you might hear Kami's teachings. It was very, very weird to acknowledge that Kami-sama was telling me to convert to another religion. But I had made a deal. I said, you know what, Ramadan's coming up, I will observe it. I would do all 30 days with a single heart, and then you will leave me alone about converting to Islam. That was what my inner Trump said. And it all was going according to plan. I was almost done. I was almost free. I was going to escape. Day 26 of Ramadan. Another female saint shows up in my life. She gives a speech. She talks about being a friend of God. Obviously, it's a weak spot for me. Next day, 27 Ramadan, I take Shahada. And when you do that, you say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. And that means there's no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his prophet. But again, what does Allah mean? Allah, the deity. If you say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means the exact same thing as Kami-sama. And so I just told you a nice long story. What does it mean? What is this practice of Islam that's informed by Konko? How does that work? I believe in one God, who is the light of the heavens and the earth. I believe that Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abd al-Muttalib is his prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I do pray 5 times a day. I don't know how I manage that, but I do it. I ask for forgiveness for my irreverences and sins, both witting and unwitting. I make wudu to maintain a state of ritual purity. Sometimes when I have a moment, I contemplate the universe, its origin, and I marvel at the balance of the laws that govern its maintenance. I strive to remember what I saw as a child. I am constantly reminded that faith is for people who have not seen, and that for me the standard is a little bit higher. I don't get a free pass, even though I often seem very carefree, because the middle path is actually narrow. I seek to find a way to embody the scriptures, even in the midst of the claustrophobia of the world. I seek to always remember the source of all things, Kami-sama, whose name is Allah, and acknowledge that it favors me and that I should be grateful always. I do remember and I do honor my ancestors, even if some Muslims disagree with that. In summary, on the only day in my life when I decided to go worship somebody else, Amaterasu, I was told that we do not worship Amaterasu, we worship Kami-sama. And after 3 years of introduction to this Kami-sama, I was reminded that my own ancestors, I'm 79% Hausa from Nigeria, also called Kami-sama Allah. So, we're getting close to the whole point of all this. In my practice of Islam, I've come across a repeating theme. A lot of people seem to think that I'm LGBT or transgendered or something. Even though my situation's a bit different, I was born with congenital adrenal hyperplasia called CAH. It means that I'm intersexed. People used to use the term hermaphrodite. And I've received medical care for this my entire life. And in addition to that, I have been evaluated by a couple of Islamic juries, and they have all concluded that I'm female. In Islam, the term for a hermaphrodite is called khunta. You can use the word intersex nowadays, since people are very politically correct. This status has put me in a unique position to comment on the LGBT issue as a person who is definitively in between. So, fortunately the Shintoism and the Konko part are pretty quick, but again, the Islamic jurisprudence will take a little while. Traditional Shintoism, called Jinja Shinto, has many stances and it differs depending upon the shrine in question. Many shrines refuse to perform same-sex unions, while most are accepting, even though officially in Japan, same-sex unions are still not legal. Despite this, same-sex relations have been legal under Shintoism since 1880. Konkokyo's stance is pretty simple. Konko Daijin stated flatly, "In this world, there is no one who does not belong." Second Gorikai Horimoto Rikichi, verse 1. In 2018, Konkokyo headquarters recognized the LGBT Kai as an official part of the religious establishment. Now we get to the Quran. So I've broken it down, LGBT, gay males, Quran, chapter 7, verses 80 through 84, Quran chapter 11, verses 77 through 83. Quran chapter 29, sorry for mispronouncing it. I know people in the room can hear my mispronunciations. Quran chapter 29, verses 28 through 35. And Quran chapter 26, verses 165 through 174. All condemn male homosexuality. The Quran has no explicit mention of female homosexuality in it. Neither transgenders or intersex are mentioned directly in the Quran. Some people will quote the 42nd chapter, verses 49 and 50, but it only refers to barren people. And recently people have taken to making liberal interpretations. In the hadith, so in Islam there are sayings and they're compiled in books. As I said, there's 1,500 years of this, so these things fill libraries. So it takes a while to dig through. I'm going to give you a summary. I have only used hadiths, which are in the official 6 authentic ones, and I've left out other ones that people tend to quote. Gay males. Sunan Abu Dawud, 4462, that's 4,462 through 4463. Jami al-Tamirdi, 1456 and 1457. Sunan ibn Majah, 2561 and 2563, condemning male homosexuality. Al-Tabarini al-Mujam, al-Awat, 4157, and some others that are not in the official 6, condemn female homosexuality. Excluding intersex, transgenders, Bukhari, 5886, and Sunan Abu Dawud, 4095, this is in book 32, condemn transgenderism. Bisexuality falls under the scope of general adultery, which in the Quran is condemned in the 17th book and 32nd verse of the Quran, and in the 24th book and 2nd verse. And the Hadith, Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 9, book 89, verse 293, and others condemn this. That's a lot of condemnation. So, is that it? Are we all just going to hell in a handbasket? There's another verse, Quran chapter 7, verse 156. My mercy encompasses everything. Now, does this mean that a believer in Konko or Islam should just say, oh, you do whatever you want and it's okay? Konko Daijin once said, there are many people who speak ill of others. If you are in such company, try to get away. Help people secretly. If you help people secretly, you will naturally receive Kami's blessings. So why am I saying that in my comments about Islam? Because likewise, the Quran states, Allah does not like the disclosure of anyone's evil in public. Quran chapter 4, verse 148. This is further backed up by a hadith stating, whoever shields or hides the misdeeds of a Muslim, Allah will shield him in this world and the hereafter, and Allah will aid his servant as long as he aids his brother. And whoever follows a path to seek knowledge herein, Allah will make an easy path for him to paradise. Hadith 36, from Al-Nawawi, related by Muslim, one of the 2 most official sources of hadith. Since I quoted you 2 of the hadith and only 1 quote of Konko Daijin, I owe you another Konko Daijin quote. While you concern yourself with only trivial things, I aspire for a faith that encompasses the entire world. And that is the second Godikai, Kuniera Sangoro, verse 11. Like in Konko faith, the center of Islam is the remembrance and consciousness of Allah or Kami-sama. In Islam, this is called taqwa, which translates roughly to consciousness. In Konko faith, it's called waga kokoro, hearts grateful and caring, filled with harmony and joy, waga kokoro. In the Quran, chapter 3, verse 200, it says, patiently endure, persevere, stand on guard, and have taqwa, so that you may be successful. In Godikai 1, Shimamuro Hachitaro, verse 25, it says, you wash your hands and your mouth with water, but do you wash your temperament? It is sincerity and conscientiousness that washes it away. However large or irreverence, a sin or an irreverence may be, particularly in Islam, if it is not shirk, which means associating some partner to Allah, it does not exclude one from the community of believers, also known as the Ummah. In Islam, we are encouraged to avoid criticizing the beliefs of other people in the belief that if someone responds and in turn criticizes Islam, that they will incur some fault, and it's not their fault, it's the believer's fault for starting the argument. So if it's important to guard the welfare of people who are outside of the community, what about the people in it? Everyone sometimes needs a reminder that we have agreed to follow this path, we do it this way. But if Muslims go around avoiding walking in front of people who pray, how much worse is it to engage in a pattern of behavior that would stop some poor person from praying? To stop practicing and acknowledging God, to stop going to any house of prayer whatsoever. And the Quran actually addresses this. Book 2, verse 217. Other things are indeed grave offenses, but graver still in the sight of Allah is to prevent access to the path of Allah, to deny Him, to prevent access to the sacred mosque, and to drive out its members. Tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. Again, chapter 2, verse 217, Al-Quran. It is very important to be able to do what I just did, to stand up and state a truth. And this truth has been that Konko is accepting of all people, and Islam considers the majority of LGBT expression to be a sin. However, there is no excuse for any behavior in any religion that would stop someone from praying. Someone told me that they had left the religion and became a Satanist. And I wonder, what sort of behavior from what so-called holy person would inspire someone to embrace something like Satanism? And that person who thinks they're so holy, who are sending people into Satanism, what kind of person are they really in all of their so-called holiness? And what that addresses is this idea that we are in the habit of choosing what sins are and are not within the purview of Allah's mercy. But again, my mercy encompasses everything except shirk. Who am I to declare this person is irredeemable or that this person does not belong? again in any religion on earth, particularly when I am not a priest, a scholar, an imam, or a jurist. And I've seen recently that some imams and scholars have been condemned for not being hard enough on LGBT issues in Islam. And they've made one big mistake in advocating for the rights of LGBT people. They have forgotten to tell the uneducated parts of the Ummah that an imam is not someone who just sits up and talks, and that a jurist does not just study the law, and that scholars do not just philosophize. They have one duty: to protect and guard the community of believers. Whereas most people will be asked, even in this religion, did you pray with a single heart, conscientiously, often? Think about it. Ishin ni negae. Pray with a single heart. That's what you'll be asked. So what will the priests be asked? Did you protect my community? Did you protect the believers? So, since it looks like my computer has died, congratulations, you are free. But I was already near the end anyway. So, there are two final quotes. One is that we need to think about who is more important, us or someone else. That's from Konko. And another one is from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, in the community of believers, my ummah is safe. Everyone will be excused except those who disclose their faults or the faults of others. I would like for you all to think very carefully about this. The ummah in Konko in Islam, the community of believers is safe. Guard each other. Protect each other. Remember God, whether you speak Japanese or Arabic, and practice a true faith, whatever you may choose to call it. Not the left hand. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of Tenchi Kane no Kami, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this Allahu nuru samawati wal ardh, that means Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, be upon you all, now and forever. Thank you for your time.